Hi, Caden. How's it going?
I'm doing pretty well. How about you?
I'm doing pretty good. It's really sunny today, though. I don't know if you can tell from my camera, though. It's kind of blinding me here during this
Oh,
interview. But I'd just like to thank you so much for coming out and taking the time to talk with us today. So as you know, my name's Dorian, and it's really nice to finally meet you. I've been reading about you for the past few weeks, so it's kind of cool to actually get to meet the person. So I think first things first, can you just give us a quick introduction to yourself and to Caden Teaches in order to give the people who are listening a chance to meet you?
okay. My name is Caden Harris, and I'm the CEO of Caden Teaches, a company that I started when I was 7 years old, and I'm 14 now. And I've been teaching kids about financial literacy. I have my own financial buzz. I've been on so many different speaking networks like Good Morning America. I've spoken for the White House. So I've just done a lot in my 14 years of life.
That's awesome, and that's awesome. So yeah, as you mentioned, you have the bus, you have all that. But can you give us your sort of origin story, starting at 7? When was the first time you were really looking at your financial literacy powers?
Well, the first time that I started getting into financial literacy, I was always going to business meetings with my dad, and I will always hear people talking about financial literacy. But at that point, I didn't quite understand what financial literacy was. So I took it upon myself to learn about financial literacy and teach it to my peers because I learned just how important financial literacy is because it can dictate your entire future. And one of the things that one of my mentors, Dr. Kimbrough, says is that when you have financial literacy, it changes where you go to school, where your kids go to school, where your grandkids go to school, and where your great grandkids go to school. So you want to make sure that they're in a nice, safe environment, and you make that all happen through financial literacy. So I knew just how important it was to teach kids about it.
That's great. That's great. And what kind of business was your dad involved in? What were you sitting in on?
My dad was just in different things like real estate meetings, and they own several different companies, such as a cleaning company, an aviation company. So just going to all these things, hearing the meetings, and going to different conferences, and hearing things from different speakers and people who have been in business for years, it was super pivotal at helping me develop and start my own company.
And so, how did this interest in financial literacy sort of affect your hobbies growing up? What did you do in your own personal time to sort of grow that urge to have financial literacy outside of just the meetings with your dad?
Well, it just made me see that there were more things I could do having financial literacy and having my own business because there were certain things that I could buy, I could attend different things that I like, and I was able to pour more into my passions and into my hobbies. For example, I'm a huge wrestling fan, and just by being able to teach kids about financial literacy, I've been able to fly me and my dad to Los Angeles, which was where they had WrestleMania 39.
And so, what was your sort of memory of getting into this business world? Was it saving coins in your piggy bank growing up, or what was your first step into thinking, hey, I can actually do this for myself?
Well, one thing that my dad and my mom would always do is that when they would get a check or they would deposit a check in the bank, they would give us the card and give us the check and tell us what to do to go deposit it. So I would just go and say, my name is Caden, and I'd say I like to deposit a check for X amount of money. And then I just learned how to start depositing checks. And so they would just show us these things from an early age. And when we would go to the grocery store, they would teach us how to budget there. So they would say if we're going on this strict budget, then you could add off all your things. And they would show us how to talk to the cashier, how to pay for everything. So just showing us and exposing us to these different things at an early age really helped us.
Can you tell us a bit more about that? What did it start out as, and where is it now?
So I had the idea for the financial literacy bus because I knew that I wanted something that had a mock bank, a mock grocery store, and a mock stock exchange where kids could all learn about these things in a fun and interactive way. And I figured that the best way to do that is by having a mobile bus to where kids could learn about financial literacy and it could travel all around Georgia. And I started going to these different schools, and the kids really enjoyed it, and they were having so much fun just being able to learn from the bus and being able to get on it and see how awesome the bus was inside and how it kind of looked a little futuristic and how realistic everything looked on the bus. And since a lot of the kids have seen gaming buses, they just instantly got excited that they saw a bus with cool things on it. So that really helps get them immersed and helps them enjoy the experience when they do get on the bus, instead of just me teaching them and speaking directly to them, which could be a little bit boring to them.
And where did you, sort of get like the idea and the structure for this bus? Because, at such a young age, it's probably not, incredibly easy to map out this sort of thing. Did you know, I mean, there's the grocery store aspect and there's the faux banking aspect, but where did you kind of like get the rest of the ideas for like the actual structure and like how to make this bus?
Well, I knew that it needed different areas for the kids to learn, so I came up with the idea of having a tablet station on there so then they could be able to go on different tablets, and instead of them having to touch all the things in the grocery store, which could get super dirty easily, we decided to use the tablet so then they do the grocery list on there. They get to still see everything in the store, but it makes it a lot easier. And we actually had, when I was getting the bus, I got a fortune cookie that actually said, "You'll be blessed with a 4-wheel investment in the near future." And I was so surprised, and I ran up to my parents and I showed them the fortune cookie that I got, and I read it to them, and I took a picture of it, I framed it, and I still have that fortune cookie to this day. So it was just crazy how that fortune cookie predicted the entire bus and that it would help make my wishes come true.
No way. That's crazy. Do you still have it to this day?
Yeah.
That's cool. That's so cool. And are there any mentors or people that sort of like, especially you want to shout out or that helped you?
So one of the biggest things that helped me get to this point is having a lot of the different mentors and being able to attend conferences. And some of my biggest mentors have been people, as I mentioned earlier, Dr. Dennis Kimbrough, Jeremy Anderson, Eric Thomas, who is an awesome speaking coach for me. I've just had so many awesome people. A billionaire and Mr. Michael V. Roberts, one of the only black billionaires, or one of the only few black billionaires. So it's been great just being mentored by these amazing people who've been showing me the ropes and showing me how to continue running my business and how to do it successfully.
That's great. That's great. And speaking of mentors, how did you sort of go about finding these people, or how did they find you?
Well, one of my favorite things to use is LinkedIn. While a lot of people may think my social media may be something like Instagram or Snapchat, or TikTok, it's actually LinkedIn, because I've been able to use it to message a lot of people that I want to get together with and maybe do an interview with. And for a lot of these mentors, it actually all started with my interview series, Minutes with Millionaires, where I would interview them, and then we would use the information that we got that we did to interview them, and I put it into a book. So it was just really helpful, and that helped me get closer and connect with them further, and it led to a mentorship. And LinkedIn not only helps me connect with people in business, it also helps me connect with people just that I would love to connect with, like wrestlers. I've been able to connect with a former wrestler like DDP, Diamond Dallas Page. So it's really helpful just connecting with the people that I want to.
That's great. And what do you think makes for a good mentor? And I guess a part two to that question would be, how can people, especially, younger people, which is our audience, find mentors like within their own community or within their own bubble?
Well, for kid mentors, for kids, it's super easy to find mentors. You can just, for example, your teachers are great mentors because they can just tell you different things. They have a lot of life experiences because they've lived longer than you. Then just your parents, they can also be helpful. And also using things like LinkedIn, like having your parents help you create a LinkedIn account, it can just be super helpful to reach these different people and to reach these different mentors. And if you see there's someone that you want to connect with, try looking at their social media and see if there's an event they're going to be at. And you go to that event and you introduce yourself and you could ask if they could mentor you.
That's incredible. That's great. And what are some of the, resources or things that you searched online? Like, how did you sort of grow this? And I guess I said online, that can also include like physical books and whatnot, but how did you grow your financial literacy outside of these mentors? Or what were some of the resources that they directed you towards?
They directed me to different pages that I could look at to read about financial literacy. and they encourage me to look at different things like the stock market, read a lot of books and read daily. So I've been making sure to read books daily, and currently I'm reading Inner Excellence by Jim Murphy. So that's been super helpful, and it's teaching me a lot of new things.
That's
And one
awesome.
of the things it specifically teaches me is that culture usually says that success is one thing, and they like to say that success is having a nice car, having a nice house, when that's not truly what success is. Success is what gives you inner excellence and what gives you inner peace and inner happiness and inner strength, not just the flashy things and the things that everyone may think look, but the things that make you look cool. So it's just making sure that you find what really makes you happy and what really gives you that inner excellence.
That's awesome. I hate to pivot because that's such a positive note that we were just on, but now I want to talk about like some of the struggles of like owning your own business. And did you ever start, especially in the beginning, being so young and having such lofty ideas? Did you ever sort of struggle to get the wheels turning on your first business?
Well, one of the biggest struggles that I had to get over was seeing that people are gonna leave hate messages and that people are gonna not always be so positive. Like, for example, when I was in school, a lady came to our school for career day and she asked everyone what career they wanted to do when they grew up. And I said that I wanted to continue being an author, speaker, and CEO. And she said, that's not a real career. And I said, yes, it is. And she said, no, it's not. And I'm not going to argue with you. And I actually created a book named I'm Not Going to Argue with You from it. And she went to a boy who was sitting next to me and she asked him, what did he want to do when he grew up, when he grows up? And he said that he wanted to either be an athlete or a rapper. And she thought that that was the greatest idea when there's other ways to make money and there's other careers instead of just holding a microphone or holding a ball in your hand. And she just thought that that was the best and most exciting thing, when most people that do have aspirations of doing something athletic or in rapping, a lot of the times they don't make it in that industry. So I knew that I wanted to continue doing this, and I actually had a pitch competition like a week after that for speaking, and I won $25,000 doing what she said isn't a real career, and I proved her wrong. I think that kids should listen to me because I believe that teaching financial literacy is super important, and just people overall growing up and becoming an adult. And without financial literacy, it will be very difficult to live in life, because I know that money isn't everything, but you need money for everything. You need money for food, for water, for shelter. So it just proves how important financial literacy is and why everyone needs to know about it. And the earlier you learn, the better.
What were some of the most, sort of surprising things to you when first starting your business? Either good or bad things that happened where, you're just beginning the business journey and this was not something that like you could have been prepared for. Like no one warned you of this.
Like in a good or a negative way.
Either way, it could be either.
I just didn't expect it. It would end up becoming this big to where I could be on Good Morning America and to where I could speak for Forbes. Because actually, when I was attending something called the Prudential Emerging Visionaries, it was like a week-long thing where you were able to connect with other kids your age who were doing great things. And it would bring us around New York and New Jersey and just show us different things that we could do when we did grow up, and how we could continue our business ventures. And while I was actually there, my mom called me while we were in the middle of an award show for the thing, and she said, get your dad on the phone right now. So I ran to my dad, who was in the middle of a conversation, and I said, Mom wants you. And he thought maybe something was wrong or that there was an issue, but she told us both that the White House had just emailed us, and they said that they wanted us for a speaking event that Friday. And guess what day it was?
What day?
It was a Monday, and we were leaving the next day. So we literally had to get our flight booked and be there by Thursday so we could be there for the speaking event on Friday. So we had zero time to prepare. So me and my dad got home the next Tuesday morning. We got all of our stuff ready and packed on Wednesday and booked the flights on Wednesday. And then on Thursday, we flew out and we were in DC ready to speak for the White House tomorrow. So it was just crazy how we didn't have anything planned for the rest of the week. We just thought that we were going to come home and chill after that. And then I ended up speaking for the White House on that short of notice. So that was super awesome and an amazing experience.
And so I guess this is sort of my last question on sort of the negative route here. But if you can name one thing that was sort of the biggest hardship with starting your own business, and how did you overcome that? Because a lot of people, I feel like when they start their first business, they experience one major roadblock. I remember in the previous interview I did, it was like a lot of like legal issues, like with, it was a sock design company, which you would think, what's the hardship in that? But a lot of it was like they're being sued over the designs of their socks. And like some people think that they own certain designs. So it's always something unexpected. But what do you think was the single hardest struggle you had to overcome in order to start your business?
I would say one of the hardest things was trying to get the correct products and making sure that they had the perfect designs and making sure that they looked good. Because when we first started my company, I made a lot of these products and I thought that they looked spectacular. But over the years, I evolved and redesigned the products and made them look better. And I was just taking a look back at them and I was like, what were we thinking? These look terrible. And I heard a quote from someone yesterday and they said, if you look back at your previous track record and it looks the exact same, then you're doing something wrong. You should always look at anything you do and be like, man, how did I do that? Or how did it look that bad in the past? So you should always evolve and always make things better, because there was one product I had specifically, which were like these budgeting magnets, and they didn't do that well in sales. So I also had to learn to pivot when it's time for a new change or when it's time for a new product. So we pivoted with that and we ended up creating a budgeting puzzle instead.
What a great pivot. I feel like from magnets to puzzle, that just makes too much sense. And then I guess this sort of leads into our next question. I guess looking back at it now, is there anything you would have done different, especially during like the beginning of Caden Teaches?
I just wish that I would have maybe found a lot more mentors earlier and that maybe I would have made sure that those designs did look better earlier. But there's not too much things that I would change because everything does happen for a reason. And a lot of the negative stuff does happen for a reason because it's good for my character building and it's great for me to be able to evolve and change. So a lot of the things that do happen and a lot of the hardships in business are necessary. And one of the another big hardship that I had was when we first created the bus.
Can you walk us through what your average lesson would look like in the financial literacy bus? Is it sort of like a free roam thing where you let kids walk around in it, or is it more like structured lesson based?
So typically when we do an event with the bus, I do a workshop inside where I'll speak for about 30 minutes and then we do a few things inside, like we do the budgeting puzzle. We have a few little games like assets versus liabilities, where we split groups into separate teams and they have to name a ton of assets and name a ton of liabilities, and whoever gets the most in a set amount of time wins. So we just have a lot of different things that we do before, and then we bring them out on the bus and we typically split them into groups of 10 or 12, and then they come on the bus and then they go to their tablet station where we do teach them how to manage their money, how to have a family budget, how to earn, save, and invest. So we're just making sure that we teach them these things when they get on the bus. And so they have a lesson for about 20 minutes where they have like these financial bus books and they just go through the books and I help them. And it's just a really fun experience for the kids when they do get on.
A lot of kids your age, wouldn't exactly have the knowledge or resources available to start their own business or begin their own financial journey. So I guess this is sort of a two-part question, but how do we start to fix that, not only in schools, but within like conversations at home between the parents and their kids? And secondly, what is some advice that you personally would offer to kids, sort of around your age who might be considering more about financial security or their own businesses?
Well, one thing that I always teach kids is if they do want to start a business, is to look at people that are where you want to do. So if you want to start a certain business, look at people that are doing that and are doing it at a high level, and maybe ask to shadow them for a day or ask for them to mentor you. And it's like I said earlier, you can use LinkedIn for that and try to connect with them through there. And another thing is making sure that you do a lot of research in what company you want to start. So making sure that you're researching all the ins and outs, listening to all the interviews and all the podcasts about people that do it. And a couple years ago, I was actually taking place in a meeting with my governor's office to help pass a law where schools will be mandated to teach kids about financial literacy in high school. So we were making that happen, and it was happening in a lot of states all around the United States. But I'm not sure exactly where that is at, since what's currently going on with our government. So I don't know where that's going to be going with the school system, but hopefully it will still be something that's implemented in the school systems.
Right, that makes sense. And then in terms of like conversations, with your kids, I guess, like what were some of the words of advice that your parents gave you that you feel like were super beneficial towards you gaining financial literacy that you feel like you should pass on to other parents right now?
There were just so many things that they helped me with, and they taught me that you will have to keep going and that there will be some negativity that you'll have to go through, and that you are going to get no's in business, but you have to continue pushing through those, and those no's will end up turning into yeses, and you'll end up reaching success, which as long as you get through the no's, you will be good and you will be able to continue running your business. So that's one of the biggest things that they did teach me at an early age.
That's awesome. And what are some, resources that you would advise being like within the household or within the school that can sort of like aid that process? Any books or even like YouTube videos, websites, etc.
I say making sure that you read daily as a kid, and that's been something that's super helpful in my life. Making sure that you watch different helpful podcasts and interviews, and even if it's not always something like business, if it's something like an athlete, you can watch their interviews, because it's great to be able to get into their mindset and to know exactly what they do for training, to know, making sure that they have a great make sure that they have a great career, make sure that they stay healthy and knowing exactly how they do it, and making sure that they have a great mindset. So it's just super helpful watching a lot of interviews. And I'm a wrestling fan, I like watching a lot of wrestling interviews, and it's just great hearing their mindset and hearing how great their dedication is. So just watching different interviews and podcasts can truly help.
That's awesome. That's very admirable. It's a great goal. So do you have any sort of final parting wisdom to the audience? If there's one thing you want them to take away from this interview, what would it be?
One thing that I always tell people is that you want to make sure that you're following your gift, because God gives everyone a gift. You just have to figure out what that gift is and implement it into your life. And a lot of times people say follow your passion, but sometimes your passion may not be the thing that always leads you to success. But that's not to say that your passion can't come true, or that your passion can't be your gift. But one thing that I always say is making sure that you follow your gift, because I have a passion in wrestling, but I'm most likely not ever being a wrestler. So it's just really good to make sure that you are following your gifts, because when you do that, you're able to pour more back into your passion. Like, as I mentioned earlier, I'm able to go to all these different wrestling events. I'm able to meet wrestlers. Like, I've met some of my favorites like Jeff Hardy, Cody Rhodes. So just by doing this, it's helping me meet a lot more wrestlers and helping me pour more into my passion. And one person who I do look up who has done that in the past, or who does do that now, is Dwayne Johnson. He was a former wrestler and not an actor, and he knew that he had a gift in entertaining millions all around the world. And he decided to use his gift, which was entertaining people, and turn it into a passion, which he had a passion in football. So he was able to start his own football league.
That's great. Well, Caden, thanks so much for coming out and talking with us today. I think this was incredible, for our audience, which is mainly tailored towards the high schoolish age range. So thank you so much again for coming out and talking today. This has been like my favorite conversation I've had so far for this job.
It was my pleasure. Thank you for the great conversation.
Of course.